I'm Emily Carter, 32, and I've spent all morning seasoning the turkey with fresh rosemary and thyme, the kitchen already humming with the promise of my best Thanksgiving dinner yet. 2 hours before my parents and sister arrive, I glance at my phone, and my heart stops. My savings account, the one I've been building since college, shows an overdraft of $50,000, vanished in a single brutal swipe. The scent of roasting bird mingles with dread as I scroll through the transaction history. Unauthorized withdrawal, $50,000, 0 cents. I'm standing alone in my sunlit Chicago kitchen, the counters lined with cranberry sauce and candied yams, while my financial security evaporates in real time. Every warm memory of laughter around this table feels like an echo, my blood running cold as panic sets in. How did this happen? Who would dare steal our family's nest egg on the day we give thanks? My fingers tremble over the bank's helpline. Thanksgiving disaster, unfolding before the first guest even rings the doorbell. I can still taste the cinnamon and nutmeg in my grandmother's pumpkin pie, even though she's been gone for nearly a decade. Every Thanksgiving, our Chicago home smells like homecoming. The sharp zing of fresh cranberries tossed with orange zest, the buttery flake of homemade biscuits, and the saccharine warmth of my mom's sweet potato casserole. My mother, Susan Carter, insists on using only organic yams, maple syrup imported from Vermont, and a final dusting of brown sugar, which last year totaled $347, 0 cents, just for the grocery bill. An expense she cheerfully calls part of the holiday magic. When I was a little girl, I'd perch on a stool at our kitchen island, watching Susan and my older sister Lily work in perfect tandem. Lily, 3 years my senior, had a flair for presentation. She arranged garnishes in precise star patterns and placed sprigs of fresh rosemary around the turkey platter like a miniature evergreen forest. I, on the other hand, was the designated taster, tasked with sampling every side dish for seasoning, crumbs of cornbread perpetually lining my shirt. My taste test budget was exactly 0, but back then I considered the privilege priceless. Outside the kitchen, my father, Robert, hovered over spreadsheets. He's a financial advisor by trade, a man who lives and breathes budgets and returns on investment. His office was never truly closed. The soft glow of his desk lamp spilled into the hallway as he reconciled clients' accounts or tracked the Dow Jones. Even so, he always made time for our Thanksgiving table, carving the turkey with a flourish that drew applause from all of us. When Lily graduated college, she opened a small savings account with a $5,000 0 cents nest egg we all contributed to as a sisterhood fund, she called it. Money set aside for her dreams, whether that meant traveling to Europe or launching her own online boutique. Jake and I deposited our allowances and babysitting earnings without hesitation, eager to see Lily succeed. I remember clutching my first paycheck, $85 0 cents for mowing lawns, and rushing to the bank with Jake, breathless in the late November air, to make my deposit. It felt like planting seeds in fertile ground, each dollar a promise of future bloom. But promises, I've learned, can wither. 20 years ago, before I was born, my father used $15,000, 0 cents from that same fund to invest in a lakeside property in Michigan. He spoke of it with bright eyes, a vacation rental that would generate steady income, a second home where our family could gather for generations. My mother, ever supportive, signed the papers, imagining years of laughter echoing off hardwood floors. Instead, the deal fell through. Permits delayed, prices soared, and by the time they sold at a loss, the market had soured. The fund evaporated, minus a few $1,000s returned, and my parents never spoke of it again. I pieced the story together in hushed fragments. The late-night phone calls, the bills piling up on the kitchen counter, and my mother's quiet tears as she stood at the stove, stirring that same sweet potato casserole she made every year. Despite the setback, Thanksgiving remained sacred. We rebuilt our traditions like a carefully reconstructed heirloom. That $15,000 0 cent shortfall became an unspoken lesson. To cherish what you have, to appreciate the effort behind every dish, and to keep moving forward one perfectly roasted turkey at a time. When I moved into my own apartment 8 years ago, I carried that lesson with me. I started my career at Chicago Consulting Group, earning my way up to a data analyst position with the pride of someone who'd paid her rent and student loans without asking for a dime from home. Every year, I sent my folks a check for $200.00 to chip in for ingredients, a modest contribution compared to my mother's grocery list, but a symbol of my ongoing commitment to the best Thanksgiving ever. Lily, now a successful e-boutique owner, flew in from New York, her suitcase brimming with sequin table runners and handcrafted napkin rings. She'd splurged $120.00 on special linen placemats, emblazoned with autumn leaves, just to see our table sparkle. Jake? Well, that's where the memory gets bittersweet. As kids, Jake and I shared everything. Bunk beds, bike rides to the park, and our savings account. He was my partner in crime when we were 8, sneaking extra cookies when Mom's back was turned. He was the one who convinced me to invest $300.00 in a pop-up lemonade stand that summer, teaching me the first lesson about profit margins when we netted exactly $50.00 in 2 hot afternoons. Yet, somewhere along the way, something shifted. Jake went to law school and chose a different path. Late nights at the firm, back-to-back client meetings for $125.00 an hour. He started wearing tailored suits, swapping his childhood baseball cap for silk ties. I envied his confidence, the way he commanded a room, the ease with which he laughed at jokes, the crispness of his cufflinks reflecting the fluorescent courtroom lights. But I never envied the shadows in his eyes when he thought no one was watching. Last year's Thanksgiving was tense. Jake arrived late, drenched from the November rain, cheeks flushed with cold and guilt. He barely touched the turkey, hovering instead by the buffet table, nursing a glass of red wine, $16.00 a bottle from that vineyard in Napa that Dad once touted as a solid investment. I thought he was exhausted from a tough case, but he couldn't meet my eye and his handshake was cold. Later, Susan found him in the garage staring at the toolbox Dad left him, a silent correspondence between brothers that I never fully understood. He shook his head and went back inside, leaving me with questions I couldn't articulate. This year, though, my heart held on to the same hopeful rhythm. Thanksgiving meant forgiveness, new beginnings. I spent the Monday before the holiday calling local farmers markets to reserve the heritage breed turkey, $69.00, scoured the spice aisles for cranberries at $4.99 a bag, and ordered the bakery's specialty pumpkin pies at $18.00 each, 4 pies to be exact, because Susan insists on variety. I even hired a local caterer, paying an extra $250.00 for help with the mashed potatoes and gravy so that Lily and I could focus on dessert and decoration. My dad, honoring an unspoken agreement, would handle the wine selection, $200.00 for 6 bottles, and Jake? Well, I assumed he'd show up with his usual grin, ready to swap memories and jokes. As I laid out my grandmother's silverware, each knife and fork engraved with her initials, I felt the full weight of our history. The chipped gravy boat my mom uses, the southwestern patterned tablecloth I'd bought on sale for $65.00, the hand-painted candle holders that belonged to my aunt. Every piece told a story of resilience and restoration, of a family that chose gratitude over grudges. But gratitude can be fragile. That morning, before the oven beeped its first reminder to baste the turkey, I took one last look at my bank balance. $50,000.00 that I'd saved for years, the cushion that kept me up at night in student loan repayment and job layoffs. And in that quiet moment, surrounded by flour-dusted countertops and half-peeled carrots, I felt the past and present collide. All those memories of joy and disappointment, triumph and failure, came rushing back in a single heartbeat. I closed my eyes, inhaled the mix of rosemary and rising dread, and braced myself. Because I knew that no matter how many times we rebuilt our traditions, no matter how tightly we held onto our savings or our hopes, the real test of family wasn't how well we cooked the turkey. It was how we survived the disasters we never saw coming. The kitchen felt impossibly warm as the turkey skin crackled under the heat, but a chill crawled up my spine when my phone buzzed again. I wiped my hands on my apron, faint streaks of butter and gravy, and stared at the screen. Another alert from my bank. Unusual activity detected. I tapped it open with trembling fingers and froze. A withdrawal of $5,000, 0 cents, had been made from an ATM in Paris at 2:07 a.m. local time, nearly 8 hours before I'd even packed my bags for Thanksgiving dinner prep. My heart pounded so hard I could almost taste it, metallic and sharp. I sank onto the nearest stool, the wood cool beneath me. Around me, stainless steel pots hissed with simmering cranberry relish, and the air smelled of orange zest and cloves, but the comforting aromas only sharpened the edge of dread. Paris? I'd never left Chicago in the past year, let alone touched an ATM overseas. My pulse fluttered as I scrolled through the transaction history. ATM withdrawal, no receipt available. Location confirmation unavailable. My chest tightened. The world felt like it was tilting on its axis. I dialed the bank's fraud hotline number, my voice catching as I requested more details. The representative, cheerful, apologetic, promised to escalate the case, but when I asked for surveillance footage from the Paris ATM, she hesitated. "I'm sorry, Ms. Carter, that branch hasn't provided video access to our monitoring team. It's standard for overseas ATMs." Overseas ATMs? My stomach nodded. I glanced at the bright, homely backsplash of white subway tile. The kitchen light, usually so welcoming, felt hostile, casting every corner in exaggerated relief. I took a deep breath, tasting the faint tang of the stainless steel faucet I'd cleaned before starting. My grandmother's silver spoon, now polished and glinting, reflected the overhead light like a searchlight. I couldn't let panic blind me. I needed data. I opened my laptop at the island, just beneath the spice racks lined with jars of cayenne, paprika, and cinnamon, and logged into my account statements. Every single pending transaction loaded in a neat chronological list. There it was, the Paris withdrawal, followed immediately by a declined payment at Maison de la Presse, a newsstand kiosk notorious for exorbitant prices. Then an attempted purchase of €650, 0 cents, worth of luxury handbags at Galeries Lafayette, which mercifully had been declined. I rubbed my temples, the headache building behind my eyes. The pine-scented candle on the counter flickered in a draft, melting its wax in uneven puddles. If someone stole my identity, they were running wild across continents and spending thousands in just a few minutes. "I need every detail," I muttered to myself, tapping back to the bank's customer portal. I printed the PDF of flagged transactions on my small home printer, the pages feeding out slowly, a staccato of whirs, page after page, each line a stab of disbelief. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from Lily. "Emily, need you to bring the silver candlesticks. See you at 4 p.m. Love, L." 4 o'clock was less than an hour away. My throat went dry. I couldn't walk into a house of smiling faces while my bank account was being emptied by a phantom thief in Paris, but telling my family now would ruin the moment, would turn every raised glass into an awkward hush. I needed a clue first. I slipped out of the kitchen to the foyer, leaving the printed statements on the island. The house was quiet, the front door locked behind me. I dug my phone from my pocket and opened the recent call log. No unfamiliar numbers except the bank's support line. Then I noticed something, a tiny icon indicating data usage spikes at odd hours. I tapped into my mobile carrier app, scrolling through the usage breakdown. That's when I saw it. A $120.00 additional roaming charge flagged for data in France. My palms grew slick with sweat. I'd paid for international roaming just once last year, when Jake and I shared a vacation plan, and even then I restricted my data use. This charge had to be part of the same unauthorized spending spree. I stared at the app's screen, the blue and white graphs mocking me. Someone had not only stolen my money, but was exploiting my mobile plan to conceal their tracks. The thief had masked their location by using my SIM in an unlocked device, routing transactions through a local network. My mind spun through possibilities. Could Jake have done this? He'd always bought the pricey overseas data plan for his legal research trips, but why against me? It made no sense, at least until I remembered his cold reaction last year, the way he'd hovered by the toolbox that evening, eyes distant. I closed the app and leaned against the front door, mulling over each detail. The ATM withdrawal, the luxury purchase attempts, the data roaming charge, all executed within 2 hours. Whoever did this knew how to hit quickly and vanish. My blood pounded so forcefully I almost heard it in my ears. I ducked back into the kitchen, snatched the printed pages and stuffed them into my handbag. Time was slipping away. I clicked the group chat with Lily and Mom. Hey, slight change of plans. Can I bring the silver and my laptop? Need to check something urgent on the way. I'll still be there by 4:15 p.m. I hesitated, then hit send. There was no time for apologies. I flipped through the transaction printout again. Under the withdrawal, a vague memo. Client reimbursement. That phrasing felt familiar, like the polite language Jake used in his practice. He'd handled reimbursements for clients at his firm, drafting expense reports with exact wording. Could that be the breadcrumb I needed? I exhaled, the tension not unwinding into steely resolve. I stuffed my phone and laptop into my tote, grabbed my coat and keys, and strode out the door. The crisp November air hit me like a bucket of ice water, clearing the haze of panic. I closed my eyes and recalled every conversation with Jake over the past year. His offhand mentions of tapping into funds, his evasive body language when asked about money, it all clicked into place like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. But I couldn't confront him yet. First, I needed undeniable proof. I juggled my tote and the printed statements as I locked the door. The muffled sound of Auld Lang Syne playing from the kitchen speaker floated through the walls, a happy reminder of what awaited inside. I forced a smile, telling myself that this would be over soon, and that Thanksgiving would still mean something. I slipped into my car, the leather seats cold beneath me. My mind raced through the steps ahead. Call a forensic IT specialist to trace the SIM usage, pull security footage from my home network to see if any unauthorized devices connected overnight, and sneak a peek at Jake's phone logs when I could. I started the engine, the dashboard lights spilling red across my hands. Then just as I shifted into drive, my phone buzzed one more time. It was an email notification. New voicemail from your home line. My breath caught. I hadn't set up voicemail from my landline in months, yet there it was. A message, waiting. With a trembling thumb, I tapped play. A voice, low and familiar, whispered, "If you want to know the truth, meet me in the garage. Clock is ticking." The line went dead. My heart hammered. The phone bell led me here, but this voicemail, it was taken from inside my own house. Someone close, someone who knew my routines, and they were daring me to uncover them on my home turf. I pressed my foot on the gas. The world outside blurred as I headed back, adrenaline sharpening every sense. Turkey, stuffing, family, all of it would have to wait until I unmasked the traitor hiding in plain sight. But then, that cryptic voicemail sent shivers down my spine and led me back to the garage. I pulled into the garage behind our house just as the late afternoon sun dipped below the rooftops, casting long shadows across the concrete. The door's automatic opener whirred, revealing Jake standing near the tool bench, his shoulders stiff, hands shoved in the pockets of his tailored charcoal coat. He glanced up, surprise flickering in his eyes when he saw the stack of printed bank statements peeking from my tote. "Emily?" he said, voice calm but brittle. "What's going on?" My heart pounded so loudly I could hear it in my ears. I wanted to scream, to ask him why he'd betrayed me, but first, I needed him to see the evidence. I set my bag down and withdrew the papers, stamping them onto the hood of my car. The curled pages trembled under my fingers. "Explain this," I said, voice low. "These are the transactions from my savings account. Our family's fund. Look at page 6. Jake stepped forward, squinting at the numbers. I watched as recognition and panic warred across his face. "Emily, I can explain." "Explain how you withdrew $10,000 from our account without anyone's permission?" I cut in sharply. "Here," I pointed to the entry. "November 27th, 2025, 2:07, IMM, withdrawal $10,000, 0 cents, client reimbursement." The memo line mimicked his own habit of labeling expense claims right down to the polite wording. "This is your handwriting, your phrasing. You used our joint fund to fill your personal bank account." He ran a hand through his hair, dark curls sticking up at odd angles. That was for closing costs on the condo I just bought. I meant to transfer it back after my bonus came through." "Buying a condo?" I echoed, my voice trembling with disbelief. "At 2 a.m. on Thanksgiving morning? And why didn't you tell anyone? You know how much this fund means to Mom and Dad and to me." My throat burned as I spoke. "We built that $5,000 seed fund together in high school. When Dad lost $15,000 in Michigan, we all chipped in to rebuild it. This money represents years of trust." Jake's gaze flicked to the stack of papers, then up to my eyes. He swallowed hard. "Emily, I didn't want to ruin the holiday. I planned to tell you. After Thanksgiving, I was going to ask for the extra $5,000 from my firm's expense budget. I thought I could cover it." My breath caught. "You thought stealing from your sister, your own family, would go unnoticed if you just explained later?" I forced my voice steady. "Do you know how it felt, opening my bank app and seeing overdraft, $50,000, 0 cents? Do you know the panic I went through, thinking someone had hacked me from halfway across the world?" Jake shifted uncomfortably. "I'm sorry, Em. I thought I had no other option. My case overload, the rent, the down payment, everything collided at once." "Tough luck," I said coldly. "That's your problem, not mine." I shut the car door with more force than intended, rattling the glass. "You betrayed me, Jake. You betrayed this family." He took a step forward, voice pleading. "Please, Emily. Mom and Dad don't have to find out." His eyes glistened. "I can make this right. I'll pay it all back." I laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. "You think repayment erases the betrayal?" I walked around the car to face him. "It's not just the money. It's the trust you shattered. Every memory of us saving pennies. Every promise we made. That's all in tatters now." My chest tightened as tears pricked behind my eyelids. "How could you do this on the one day our family is supposed to be grateful?" Jake ran a hand over his face, exasperation and guilt etched into the lines of his forehead. I messed up. I didn't want it to come to this." "Too late," I said firmly. I reached into my tote and pulled out my phone, tapping the call log. "I called the bank. I called the forensic IT specialist. I'm reporting this as fraud. Unless you want to sit down with Mom and Dad and explain why their daughter's savings were stolen by their son." My thumb hovered over his contact name in my phone. "You have until 5 p.m. to fix this before I escalate it." He flinched, as if I'd struck him. For the first time I saw fear. Fear not for himself, but for the wounded pride of our parents and the fracturing of our family. He nodded once, stiffly, and turned away to pick up my printed statements. I let the garage door close behind me as I backed out, headlights glinting off the driveway. My hands shook on the steering wheel. The familiar scent of oil and tool grease in the garage lingered in the air, mixing with the aroma of cinnamon and roast turkey still baking inside. It felt surreal, like two separate worlds colliding. As I drove around the block to collect my thoughts, I replayed Jake's words. I thought I had no other option. I'd thought I knew my brother better than anyone. I'd thought we shared the same values. But in that dimly lit garage, I saw a stranger, willing to sacrifice our shared past for his own gain. I pulled up in front of my mother's car, a white SUV I'd borrowed for the holiday. Lily waved from the passenger seat, her sequin table runner clutched to her chest. The sight of my sister, so excited for the holiday, pierced me with guilt. I couldn't let her step into this without warning. I grabbed my phone. "Lily," I typed. "Change of plans. I need 10 minutes with you in the pantry, something urgent." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Lily's quick reply came, "On my way." I pocketed my phone and stepped onto the porch, boots crunching in the thin layer of frost. The front door's holly wreath glowed in the porch light, and the sound of my mother humming Carole King's Home Again drifted through the crack under the door. Inside, our family was blissfully unaware of the betrayal unfolding in the shadows. I opened the door and lifted my voice. "Mom, Lily, can we talk in the pantry?" Susan emerged from the kitchen, apron dusted with flour, icing a smile onto her face. Lily followed, curiosity in her hazel eyes. We slipped into the small cedar-scented pantry near the back door, the hum of the refrigerator a soft backdrop. I placed the printed statements on the wire shelf. "Susan, Lily," I said, meeting each of their gazes. "I need you to look at this." My voice cracked on the last word, and I pressed a hand to my mouth. They leaned in as I walked through the transactions, pointing out the Paris withdrawal, the handbag charge attempt, and finally the $10,000 transfer. My mother gasped, fingers tightening around the edge of the shelf. Lily's eyes widened. "Withhold your questions," I said quickly. "Jake's in the garage. He's responsible for the $10,000 withdrawal. He used our savings fund." Susan's face went pale. "Jake wouldn't. He's family." "Mom, I know," I said, pleading for understanding, "but I've got evidence." I handed my phone to Lily, who played the data roaming charge notification. "This isn't a mistake." Tears slid down my cheeks. "He's betrayed all of us." My mother sank onto a low stool, head in her hands. Lily put an arm around her, both staring at the printouts in stunned silence. The weight of the revelation pressed down on me, but I refused to look away. And then, before I could brace for their questions, my phone buzzed again. It was a voicemail notification from my landline. I'd played it once, alone in the kitchen, but hearing it now in front of Mom and Lily added a new layer of dread. I tapped play and held the phone close. The familiar whisper came through. "If you want the full story, meet me in the garage, and don't bring anyone else." Mom and Lily exchanged frightened glances. My mother's lips trembled. Lily's face hardened with resolve. "I'm going," I said, tone final. "Take me," Lily insisted. "We're in this together." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. As we moved toward the garage door, the soft click of the latch echoed like a countdown. My hands still trembled, but with every step the betrayal felt more real, and the need for truth burned brighter. And when I thought the betrayal had been laid bare, that final recording sent shivers down my spine. I closed the garage door behind us, the metallic clang echoing like a verdict. The damp evening air wrapped around me as Rachel and I walked back to my car, headlights slicing through the mist. My legs felt like lead. Every step toward the vehicle was an effort. Once inside, I sank into the driver's seat and pressed the button to lock the doors. My fingers trembled so violently I nearly dropped my phone. The windshield wipers swished to life, but their steady rhythm couldn't match the pounding of my heart. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass, watching raindrops race one another down the pane. It felt as though the world outside was crying with me, each drop a reminder of the betrayal I'd just confronted. I fumbled for the seatbelt, pulling it across my chest. The click sounded surprisingly loud in the charged silence. I tried to steady my breathing, inhaling deeply through my nose and exhaling slowly, but the air in the car tasted tight, like I was breathing through a straw. I wanted to scream, to wrench the pain from my chest, but only a hoarse whisper escaped my lip. "Why, Jake?" I choked out, though he wasn't here to answer. Rachel slid into the passenger seat and placed a gentle hand on my arm. Her presence was a lifeline in the storm of emotions. "You don't have to face this alone," she said softly. I turned my head to look at her, mascara smudged beneath my eyes. "He was my brother," I said, voice cracking. "My baby brother. We built dreams together with that money. I trusted him more than anyone." She squeezed my arm. "I know, and I'm so sorry." I wiped a hand across my face, smearing tears and rain into a single blur. My nose felt raw, and every blink sent fresh stings across my cheeks. I let out a shaky laugh, hollow, desperate. All my life, Thanksgiving was the one day everything felt right. The cooking, the laughter, the traditions. Now it's all poisoned. I exhaled, allowing Rachel's calm steadiness to anchor me. She reached into her tote and pulled out a latte, still warm, the steam rising in gentle curls. She placed it in the cup holder between us. The familiar scent of roasted coffee beans, sweet steamed milk, and a hint of vanilla soothed me more than I expected. I wrapped both hands around the cup, the paper sleeve soft and reassuring. "Here," she said, "take a sip." I lifted the cup and brought it to my lips. The sweet warmth spread from my mouth down to my chest, momentarily calming the chaos inside me. I closed my eyes, savoring the tiny comfort. "Thank you," I whispered. She nodded, then pulled her own cup closer. "Tell me what you're feeling." I let out a ragged sigh. "I'm broken." My voice trembled. "I feel like I've been punched in the gut. Not because of the money. I can fight to get that back. But because he chose to use our family's trust as his personal ATM. He called it reimbursement, but there wasn't a shred of honesty in it." Tears welled again. I stared out at the rain-slit street, the yellow glow of the porch lights across the way casting long, wavering shadows. I keep replaying our childhood, riding bikes in the cul-de-sac, trading baseball cards, stealing cookies from Mom's mixing bowl. He was always my partner in crime, and now I don't know who he is. Rachel reached across and patted my knee. "Betrayal cuts the deepest when it comes from someone you love. You're allowed to hurt. You're allowed to grieve." I pressed my palms to my eyes, taking in her words. A sob escaped, low and wrenching. I don't know how to move past this." She exhaled softly. "One moment at a time." I let her hand rest on mine as I took a few more shaky sips of latte. The storm outside continued uninterrupted, but inside that little car, I felt a fragile calm. I closed my eyes and pictured the steaming turkey in my oven, the carefree chatter of my family in the next room, completely unaware of the storm raging behind the pantry door. My phone vibrated on the console. I almost ignored it, but curiosity and dread won. I picked it up and saw spam folder in the subject line of an email notification. With Rachel leaning over to peer at the screen, I tapped it open. The message read, "If you want the full story, Meet me on the second floor landing after dinner, and don't tell a soul." My breath caught. The sender's name was Sarah, and there was an attachment labeled Truth People. I swallowed hard, heart hammering. "There's more," I whispered to Rachel. She gave a small nod, eyes bright with concern. "Looks like this disaster has another twist." I felt a surge of determination cut through the haze of grief. The betrayal had knocked me down, but it hadn't broken me. I folded the email closed and tucked my phone away. "Okay," I said, voice steadier than it had been in hours, one step at a time. "First, I survive tonight. Then I find out who Sarah is and what she knows." Rachel smiled, a small, fierce curve of her lips. "I'll be right by your side." I scraped my boots against the wet pavement, opened the door and braced myself for everything waiting inside: the roast turkey, the unknowing family, and the secrets that would upend this Thanksgiving night. And then, as the door swung open, I realized the real storm was just beginning. I stepped back into the kitchen just as the oven timer dinged, a hollow, ironic sound that underscored the chaos around me. The turkey's skin was a perfect golden brown, but I couldn't muster the appetite to carve it. Instead, I grabbed my laptop from the island and dragged it onto the dining table, scattering printouts of bank statements and credit card receipts. The glow from the overhead chandelier cast long shadows over the papers, creating a battlefield of numbers and dates. Rachel hovered nearby, concern etched on her face. "What's next?" she asked, voice gentle but resolute. I exhaled, then began outlining my plan. "First," I said, tapping a printed receipt, $347.00 for groceries. "I need a complete audit of every transaction logged in the past 30 days. That includes groceries, utilities, and any automatic bill payments. I want a clear baseline of normal activity so we can isolate the fraudulent ones." I slid the receipt into a neat stack. Then, "I'm calling a forensic IT specialist. Their retainer is $2,500.00, but if they can trace the IP addresses and SIM usage back to the source, we'll have proof." Rachel pulled a chair next to me. "I'll call the specialist. What about the lawyer?" "Right," I nodded, pulling up my email. "My attorney, Parker and Mills, quoted a flat fee of $2,500.00 for initial engagement, drafting a cease and desist and preparing fraud claims. I'm sending them everything tonight." I began copying the message into the email client, attaching the PDF of flagged transactions. "Legal backing will pressure whoever did this to return the funds, but we need technical evidence first." I paused, thinking back to the voicemail's cryptic instructions. "Meet me on the second floor landing after dinner." Whoever Sarah was, they had something critical to share. I doubted it was an innocent friend. This was Thanksgiving night, and danger lurked in every corner of the house. But I needed to know the truth. "Let me handle the tech side," Rachel offered, her finger hovering over her phone's dial. "I know a guy at ByteTrace Solutions. He helped me recover emails after my divorce." "Perfect," I said, relief threading through my exhaustion. "Please. And ask if he can work overnight. I don't want another sunrise with my account still empty." We worked with quiet efficiency. I organized the receipts into categories: groceries, utilities, streaming services, and miscellaneous, and marked every unusual charge in red pen. Rachel called ByteTrace. I hit send on the legal email, then propped my elbows on the table, rubbing my temples as the adrenaline drain set in. Minutes later, Rachel hung up. "They can start immediately," she said. "Mike Hale will be on site in 2 hours to set up remote access. He said he's seen every kind of breach you can imagine, but he's curious why someone chose Thanksgiving as the attack date." I let out a shaky laugh, because it hurts the most when the walls are supposed to feel safest. Outside the front window, snow began to fall, soft flakes drifting into the glow of the porch lights. I watched them for a moment, mesmerized by their calm descent, and felt a spark of defiance ignite in my chest. This was my house, my holiday, my family, and I wouldn't let someone steal that without a fight. "Okay," I said, standing up. "I need to meet this Sarah person, but I'm not going up to the second floor landing until after dinner. We need to keep the family from suspecting anything." I glanced at the fully set table, candles flickering in their holders. The stuffing was steaming in a covered dish, and the pies glistened under domed lids. Rachel nodded. "I'll tell Lily and Mom. You're finalizing something urgent on your laptop. They'll understand." I grabbed my phone again and sent a quick group text. "Running final checks, be down in 10. Then I turned back to the statement printouts. My eyes caught a suspicious pattern: 3 withdrawals labeled client reimbursement on October 15th, 22nd, and 29th. Each for $2,500.00, all on Jake's firm's expense codes. These stood out because our shared fund had never been used for such reimbursements before. Instead, those were the exact dates Jake mentioned in our childhood stories: Halloween week, right after Lily's birthday party, and the Friday before Thanksgiving last year. It felt too deliberate. I jotted a note in the margin: "Investigate Jake's expense reports for these dates." If I could prove he'd been using our family fund to cover his firm expenses month after month, then this wasn't a momentary lapse but a pattern of theft. A buzz came from the doorbell. Not the front door, but the side pantry entrance. Rachel and I exchanged glances. I slipped off my heels and padded over barefoot, the hardwood cold under my feet. I opened the pantry door and found Lily standing there, holding a platter of candied yams. "Hey," she whispered, eyes wide. "Mom wants to know when you'll be down." I took the platter from her. "Now," I said softly. "Thanks." Lily nodded and melted back into the kitchen's warm glow. I closed the pantry door and leaned against it, inhaling the sweet scent of yams. I felt a surge of gratitude that I wasn't facing this alone. With Rachel's tech connections and the lawyer on standby, I was building a fortress of evidence. I straightened and retrieved my coat from a hook. "I'm going upstairs," I told Rachel. "Be there in 20 minutes for dinner." She nodded, concern flickering in her eyes. "Be careful." I tucked my phone into my pocket and climbed the staircase, each step echoing in the hushed house. At the top, the second-floor landing stretched into a hallway lined with family photos: me at my graduation, Lily's wedding day, and a faded snapshot of Jake and me on a summer road trip. I paused before the photos, hand hovering over my graduation frame, then continued to the far wall where shadows pooled. No one was there. Only a folded note lying on the painted banister. I picked it up, unfolding the crisp paper. In spidery handwriting it read, "Meet me in Dad's office at 8:00 p.m. Bring no one. The truth will set you free." Dad's office, 2 doors down from my childhood bedroom. I checked the clock on the landing. 7:45. Time was slipping away, but I also knew I needed at least 5 more minutes to gather my courage. I hesitated, then tucked the note into my pocket and hurried back downstairs. In the foyer, I paused to smooth my hair and adjust my blouse, forcing a calm expression. The front door opened as Mom stepped out, flour smudges on her cheek. "Emily," she called, "everything all right up there?" "Fine," I replied with a gentle smile, "just finalizing text on my laptop. I'll be there any minute." She nodded, relieved, and returned to the kitchen. I exhaled and made my way to the dining room, where candles glowed around the turkey. My family, Mom, Dad, Lily, and even Jake, looked up as I entered. Jake offered a tight smile, eyes flicking nervously. I took my place at the head of the table, sliding into the chair. Dad cleared his throat. "Shall we give thanks?" I glanced at my family, the love and tension swirling around us like the autumn leaves outside. I closed my eyes for a moment, took a steadying breath, and nodded. "Yes, let's." As everyone bowed their heads, I felt a small seed of resolve growing in my chest. The road ahead would be fraught with confrontations and heartbreak, but I had allies, a plan, and the determination to reclaim what was mine. And as the first words of grace left my lips, I knew the real recovery was just beginning. The last spoonful of casserole lingered on my tongue as I rose from the table, the soft glow of candles flickering over the worried faces of my family. Outside, the wind howled against the windows, swirling the first heavy snow of the season into drifts that blanketed our driveway. Inside, the hush that followed my announcement of one more thing before dessert felt thick enough to suffocate. I set my plate aside, palms slick with gravy, and moved to the corner where I had stashed my laptop and projector remote earlier, clearing a small patch of tablecloth so the light could fall cleanly on the wall. A gentle click later, and the ivory wallpaper bloomed with bold blue letters. Family Financial Review. Unauthorized transactions. I met my father's gaze first, his once proud posture now weighed by confusion, and then my mother's, her soft smile faltering as anticipation flickered in her eyes. Lily, still flushed from too many glasses of wine, leaned forward with her hands clasped, curiosity and concern mingling in her expression. Jake looked away, hands tightening in his lap as if expecting the ground to open beneath him. Over the past 4 weeks, I began, my voice steady despite the tremor in my chest, our joint family fund has suffered a series of irregular withdrawals. I clicked once, and a simple bar graph bloomed on the wall, red bars towering at October 15th, 22nd, and 29th. Each labeled $2,500, 0 cents transfer. I watched their faces as the numbers sank in. My mother's hands flew to her mouth. My father's mouth pressed into a thin line. Lily's eyes widened in disbelief, and Jake's cheeks blanched. These transactions total $17,500, 0 cents. I continued, clicking again. And then came the $5,000 0 cents ATM withdrawal in Paris 2 nights ago, plus this morning's transfer of $10,000 0 cents, bringing the total deficit to $50,000 0 cents. The room felt impossibly small as I let the arithmetic echo off the walls. I could almost hear the collective intake of breath, feel the shifting chairs, the sense that the very house trembled with the truth. Next, I brought up the IP log that the forensic specialist had traced, a timestamp, 2:07 a.m., my home network's address, and then the entry for desktop garage, the only location in the house that recorded that late-night access. I left the slide up as I reached into my pocket for my phone, tapping to play the voicemail I'd received merely hours earlier. The crackle, then a voice. "If you want the full story, meet me in the garage. Clock is ticking." The words hovered in the air, heavy with accusation. When I set the phone down, Jake sucked in a breath, rising to his feet so abruptly his chair scraped harshly against the floor. His eyes never met mine. "Emily," he whispered, voice barely a shadow of its usual confident drawl. I can explain." I kept my eyes on the frozen glass of his wine, the way his hands shook around the stem. "Explain," I said softly, "why you used our family's savings as your personal expense account, why you labeled withdrawals client reimbursements exactly as you do at your firm, to hide them, why you chose Thanksgiving morning when you knew my back would be turned." He swallowed hard, voice cracking on that familiar word, Thanksgiving. "I was desperate," he admitted, and now his voice trembled. "The condo closing costs, the rent, my caseload, everything came due at once. I thought I could replace it before today, that my bonus would clear." He took a step closer. Desperation and shame etched into every line of his face. "I'm sorry, Em. I never meant to hurt you." My throat tightened. Sorry doesn't undo the betrayal. I clicked to the next slide, legal and technical actions, a bulleted list detailing the forensic retainer, the legal counsel, and the 24-hour deadline for restitution. $57,500.00, including interest. The glow of the projector baptized the numbers in stark clarity. You have until 5 p.m. yesterday to make this right. If not, my voice faltered even as I fought to keep it steady. I will press fraud charges and pursue civil action. My mother gasped. My father's hand flew to his forehead as if to ward off the news. Lily's face crumpled in heartbreak. Even Rachel, standing behind me in the doorway, looked as though she'd been punched. In the thick, charged silence, Jake's shoulders slumped, his face drained of color. At last, Dad spoke, voice low but firm. "Son, you must atone for this, not just by repaying the money, but by rebuilding the trust you shattered." He paused, eyes sweeping from Jake to me. "We'll enroll you in family financial counseling. You will repay the full amount on a schedule we set. If you default, we liquidate the condo." Jake nodded, swallowing as if the words coated his throat. "Thank you," he managed. He looked at Mom, who now wore tears in her eyes, at Lily, who reached out a trembling hand, then his gaze found mine. Pools of remorse, apology, and a quiet plea. "I'm so sorry," he said again. "I'll do whatever it takes." I exhaled, shutting the laptop and clicking off the projector. The sudden darkness felt like a release, as if the glare of truth had burned away the shadows that had haunted us. I moved back to the head of the table, allowing my shoulders to drop, the rigid tension yielding to relief. Mom crossed around to hug me with an ache in her arms. Lily pressed against my side, murmuring that I was strong. Rachel slid into the empty chair next to mine, offering a reassuring smile. Even Dad offered a nod of pride, his hand resting lightly on my shoulder as if to say, "You did what was right." The final candles flickered in the center of the table, their soft light reframing the room from one of accusation to one of cautious hope. Dessert was served, pumpkin pie steaming under delicate crusts, and for the first time that night conversation resumed, whispers about next steps, about counseling, about repairing what had been broken. The air felt warmer, softer, as if the walls themselves were exhaling with us. I looked across the table at Jake, whose posture was no longer defiant but humbled. His apology was no longer empty words, but the first step toward restitution. The man I had once known, my brother, my confidant, stood before me, still bruised but ready to be fixed. And as I took my fork to the first slice of pie, the snow outside continued to drift quietly to the ground, each flake a promise of new beginnings, reminding me that Thanksgiving was, after all, about more than what sat on the table. It was about gratitude for the chance to rebuild, even when the foundation had cracked. We had navigated the worst of the storm, and now, with trust tentatively mending around us, we were ready to begin again. After the weight of the financial revelation settled into uneasy silence, Rachel rose and cleared her throat softly. "I have something I'd like to share," she said, her voice just above a whisper. The room shifted, all eyes drawn to her. I nodded, grateful for the chance to give space to a friend who had supported me relentlessly. Rachel peeled off her rain-damp coat and draped it over a nearby chair, then reached into her tote and pulled out a neatly folded lavender-scented scarf. "This belonged to me," she began, holding the scarf up so everyone could see its soft pastel stripes. "Last Thanksgiving, I thought I had everything figured out." She paused, inhaling the faint floral fragrance. "I was married then. We'd moved into a new condo together, and I'd gone all in on creating our perfect holiday. I bought organic cranberries, handmade candles, spent nearly $500.00 on details." Her eyes shone with unshed tears. "That morning, I woke up early in our bedroom to finish glazing my pecan pie. I slipped on this scarf, climbed into the car to fetch the newspaper, and overheard voices. My husband, in the driveway, kissing another woman. She exhaled shakily, draping the scarf across her lap. I stood there in my pajamas, watching them through the frosted glass, my heart cracking open on the spot. I ran back inside, threw the pecan pie in the trash, and called my sister. Lily's soft gasp echoed mine. Even my parents leaned forward, stunned by the vulnerability Rachel displayed. She pressed a hand to her chest. I was devastated, not just by the betrayal but by the timing. Thanksgiving is supposed to be about gratitude and family. Instead, I was alone in my own home, staring at crumbs and broken promises. I reached across the table and took her hand. "I'm so sorry," I said. "I didn't know." She shook her head, managing a small smile. "It's okay. I needed to share that tonight, because I know how it feels to have the one person you trust most turn your world upside down." She paused, glancing around at us. "But there's a lesson here too. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most also teach us resilience." Rachel unfolded the scarf and handed it to me. "I kept this ever since. The lavender reminds me that healing is a process, gentle and often scented with both pain and hope." I took the scarf, pressing it to my cheek. Its fragrance was calming, a counterpoint to the storm I'd weathered. I nodded, tears brimming in my eyes. "And there's one more thing," Rachel added, eyes glinting. "Remember those pies in the pantry? I couldn't bear to bake that morning, so I showed up empty-handed, but my sister refused to let me miss out. She threw together 4 pumpkin pies overnight, using my grandmother's secret recipe, so we'd have something sweet at dinner. She leaned back by pie, talking until dawn, and by the next morning I felt stronger than I had in months." I closed my eyes, picturing Rachel and her sister covered in flour, their laughter echoing through a quiet kitchen at dawn. The aroma of baking spices and the sweat of midnight baking became a metaphor for my own journey, from broken trust to the slow reconstruction of faith in those I loved. The autumn candles flickered on the table as Rachel finished, and I realized how her story mirrored mine. Family betrayal had left her raw, but she'd rebuilt her life one gentle act of love at a time, much like I would now. I squeezed her hand, gratitude and solidarity swelling in my chest. "Thank you," I whispered, "for sharing and for reminding us that healing can be sweeter than revenge." Rachel nodded, her smile steady. "Happy Thanksgiving, Em. We're not alone in this." Her side story, woven into my own, left us all with a renewed sense of hope, that even in the darkest moments, the smallest acts of kindness, lavender scarves, late-night pies, steadfast friendship, can light the way forward. By the time midnight rolled around, the storm outside had intensified, wind howling through the bare branches, snow piling against the garage door. Inside, the house was hushed. Everyone else had retired to their rooms or the living room for late-night coffee. I was the only one awake, lingering near the front windows with a cup of chamomile tea and the soft glow of the hallway light guiding me downstairs if needed. I couldn't sleep until this was over. Jake hadn't come to dinner after our confrontation. Instead, he retreated to Dad's office 2 floors up, pacing behind the closed door. At one point, I thought I heard his voice, whispers and rustling papers, but I wasn't ready to face him again until I was sure the fallout had run its course. A text from Rachel pinged on my phone. "Be at Dad's office at 1 a.m. The note said I could enter freely. I slipped into my slippers and tip-tapped up the staircase, the old carpet muffling my steps. My heart pounded, but each beat was steadier than the last. It reminded me that I was in control now. Dad's office door stood slightly ajar, warm light spilling into the dim hallway. I pushed it open. Jake sat at the mahogany desk, head bowed, hands clasped together over a stack of documents. Our family fund statements, legal notices, and a printed email chain from Parker and Mills demanding restitution by 5 p.m. His custom suit was rumpled, his tie was loosened. He looked up, exhaustion and shame shadowing his features. He rasped, voice hoarse. "You shouldn't have come." I stepped inside, closing the door behind me. "I needed to see this through," I said quietly, nodding toward the papers. "Your downfall isn't about punishment, it's about accountability," he exhaled, eyes darting to the documents. "I've been going through all of this since dinner ended. I drafted a repayment schedule, $2,000, 0 cents a month for 29 months, plus the family-mandated 15% interest. I also signed up for the financial counseling program you and Dad set up." He hesitated, then met my eyes. "I want to fix this." I glanced down at the repayment plan, neatly handwritten with precise amounts and dates. It was far more than he could realistically afford. I could see the strain even in his careful calculations. Yet, the effort mattered. "This is a start," I acknowledged. "But there's more." Jake's brow furrowed. "What else?" I took a breath, recalling the voicemail and the email from Sarah. "You left a breadcrumb, that note to meet upstairs after dinner, the voicemail in the garage, the one that led me to confront you." His face tightened. "I know you planned that, to give me a chance to explain without dragging Mom and Dad into it first." He swallowed. "I thought maybe you'd listen to my side before humiliating me in front of everyone." "Humiliation wasn't the goal," I said firmly. "The goal was truth. But you manipulated the process." Jake's gaze dropped to the floor. "I know. I hate that I did that. I was scrambling and I panicked." He ran a hand through his hair. "I didn't want everyone to think I was just a thief. I wanted you to hear my reasons." I folded my arms. "Your reasons don't excuse your actions. You gambled our family's security on your own desperation." His jaw clenched. "I deserve that." He paused, then reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small manila envelope. He slid it across the desk to me. "I found this in my briefcase." I opened it and pulled out a single page, an internal memo from his law firm dated October 20th, showing that his bonus had been delayed indefinitely due to budget cuts. He glanced at me. "I only learned yesterday that the bonus wouldn't clear until March. I panicked, Emily, I panicked and His voice cracked, tears welling in his eyes. For the first time, I saw more than remorse. I saw raw fear at the prospect of failing, of being unable to stand on his own 2 feet. The revelation didn't excuse his theft, but it did explain the avalanche of poor choices that followed. I placed the memo on top of the repayment schedule. "This belongs with the other documents." My voice softened. "You can't rebuild trust on lies. The full picture needs to be laid bare, even if it makes you look weaker." Jake nodded, shoulders slumping as he released a shuddering breath. "Okay." We sat in silence for a moment, listening to the wind rattling the window panes. Then I spoke again. "I'm going to share this with Mom and Dad in the morning. You'll need them to understand before we finalize the counseling and the repayment plan." He swallowed hard. "I'm ready." I stood and crossed to the desk, picking up the memo and repayment draft. "I'll join you on that counseling call next week," I said. "We'll do this together." He looked up, surprised. "Together?" I slipped the papers into my laptop bag. "Family drama doesn't end with blame. It ends with accountability and healing. You're my brother. I won't abandon you, but I also won't let you off the hook." Jake's eyes glistened with gratitude and shame. "Thank you," he whispered. I offered him a small, encouraging nod. "Rest now." He sank back into the chair, relief and exhaustion etched in every line of his face. I turned off the desk lamp and slipped out of the room, closing the door gently behind me. As I tip-tapped down the hallway, the house felt lighter. One betrayal had been confronted, and the path to redemption was laid out, however rocky. In the foyer, I paused to look at our family portrait hanging above the console table, all of us smiling in sweaters standing before a blazing hearth. I exhaled and placed a hand over my heart. "This is the beginning of your downfall. And my forgiveness," I whispered to the photograph. "Now let's rebuild." Outside, the storm began to ease, snowflakes drifting silently as if granting a fresh start. Inside, I felt a measure of peace, knowing that the hardest part, bringing the truth to light, was done, and the true journey toward healing lay ahead. The morning after the storm was calm. Dawn's pale light filtered through frost-veined windows, illuminating the soft aftermath of last night's drama. I padded barefoot down the staircase, the carpet cool under my feet, and paused at the bottom to survey the kitchen. On the counter, the remains of yesterday's feast lay tucked away. Covered dishes of turkey and stuffing, empty pie plates, and a lone cranberry sauce jar bearing only a crumb or two. The silence felt restorative rather than empty, as if the house itself had exhaled and was ready to begin anew. In the dining room, I found my parents and Lily gathered around the table, sipping coffee and reviewing the documents Jake and I had finalized before bed. His repayment schedule and signed counseling agreement were neatly stacked beside Dad's laptop, while Mom hovered over the family ledger jotting notes. When I stepped in, they all looked up, heads tilting in unison. "Good morning," I said softly, brushing a stray curl behind my ear. "Sleep well?" Dad closed his laptop. "Better than I have in weeks," he admitted. "I feel like we've cleared the air." He gestured to the papers. "Everything's in place." Mom poured me a cup of coffee, her hands gentle on the mug. "Thank you for handling everything so decisively," she said, a hint of pride in her voice. "Seeing the plan on paper, it gives me hope." Lily reached over and patted my shoulder. "You held us together, Em." I offered a small smile, though my stomach fluttered with nerves. "We did it together," I corrected, "and now we get to move forward." Jake appeared at the kitchen doorway, hair still mussed, wearing a hoodie that hung loosely over the hospital scrubs he'd borrowed for an overnight shift. He'd volunteered at the local clinic to make up for lost volunteer hours. He held a mug of tea, looking tentative but determined. I felt my chest tighten with both relief and residual pain. The image of my brother here offering reparation through service felt almost surreal. He crossed to the table and laid his tea down. "Morning," he said quietly. "I wanted to thank you, all of you. I know I have a long way to go to earn back your trust." He met my gaze. "But I'm committed to this family and to doing better." My throat constricted. I retrieved the lavender scarf Rachel had given me and draped it around my shoulders. Its familiar scent felt like a benediction. I reached across the table and placed my hand over Jake's. "I believe you," I said. "Actions speak louder than apologies. Let's start with lunch today, my treat." I grinned more genuinely than I had in days. "There's a new farm-to-table cafe in town that does an incredible sweet potato hash, and I think our family deserves a fresh meal. No baggage, no overdraft alerts." Jake's lips quirked in a tentative smile. "I'd like that." Lily raised her mug in a toast. "To new beginnings, and to Emily for leading the way." We clinked mugs, steam mingling in the soft morning light. Later that afternoon, we piled into Dad's SUV, Mom in the passenger seat, Lily in back with Rachel, and Jake riding shotgun beside me. The snow had stopped, leaving the roads glistening. As we drove, I felt a sense of catharsis settle over me. The betrayal, the confrontation, and the down-to-the-wire repayment deadlines all felt like a crucible we'd emerged from stronger. At the cafe, the rich aroma of coffee beans and sizzling sweet potatoes greeted us. We slid into a cozy booth overlooking frosted window panes, and a waitress brought steaming plates of sweet potato hash topped with poached eggs, local kale, and a dollop of creme fraiche. For a moment, all conversation paused as we savored the flavors. each bite tasting like reclamation. Over lunch, we chatted about lighter things. Lily's upcoming fashion collaboration, Mom's plans for next year's garden, and Dad's newly discovered love of winter bird watching. Jake listened and laughed without reservation, joining in the banter with a warmth that had been absent for too long. When I looked around at all of them, faces relaxed, voices easy, I knew we were healing. Back at home, I carried a slice of pumpkin pie for Mom and a latte for Rachel, who'd stayed behind to check on decorations for my YouTube channel's holiday livestream. I found her arranging pine boughs around the mantel, the lavender scarf tied carefully to a pillar as a subtle reminder of resilience. "Thanks for everything," I told her, offering both pie and latte. "I couldn't have done this without you." She hugged me, tucking the scarf snug. "You taught me about strength tonight, and about forgiveness." She pulled back, giving my shoulder a squeeze. "Let's make this our best Thanksgiving yet." That evening we gathered again, this time in lighter spirits. The turkey was a simple rotisserie roast from the cafe, supplementing our leftovers, and we ate on mismatched plates as laughter filled the air. For the first time since the crisis began, I felt truly grateful. Not for the safety net of savings, but for the people who stood by me when it mattered most. As I cleared the dishes, I reflected on the lessons carved into this holiday, that money can be counted and reclaimed, but trust, once fractured, demands patience, humility, and shared effort to rebuild. Betrayal had tested us, but it also galvanized us to confront uncomfortable truths, communicate openly, and recommit to the bonds of family. Before bedtime, I paused at the family photo wall upstairs, smiling faces captured at happier Thanksgivings. I ran my fingers over the current year's snapshot, a slightly awkward group shot outside in the snow, cheeks flushed, breath visible, genuine smiles all around. I pressed my palm to the glass. "We made it," I whispered, gratitude filling me beyond words. Later, alone in my room, I drafted the outro for my video, a sincere reflection on resilience, a reminder that sometimes the greatest gifts are reconciliation and compassion. I typed, "This Thanksgiving reminded me that family isn't defined by perfection, but by our commitment to rebuild after we break. If you've ever faced betrayal, know you're not alone, and that healing starts with honest conversations and the choice to keep gathering around the same table." Like, share, and comment below your stories of forgiveness and renewal. Let's give thanks for second chances. I hit publish, heart fluttering as the thumbnail of our snowy family photo went live. Then I leaned back, eyelids heavy, sleep beckoning. In that moment, I realized the true magic of Thanksgiving. It wasn't the turkey, the pie, or even the savings account. It was the chance to come home, fall apart, and find our way back together again. And as I drifted off, I carried with me a quiet certainty. No matter what storms lie ahead, we have each other. And that is the greatest blessing of all.